Hey everybody, Jason with Maindeck Games here. Welcome you to my very first League winner deck tech talk from our last Final Fantasy League on our Maindeck Discord. FwostySheep piloted this pretty sweet Soiree list to a win in our most recent league, which is really awesome. Congratulations, Sheep, on what a pretty sweet run that was. And then, you know, I may have mentioned League, Discord League. Well, how can I play? Well, if you check this out here, I've got a little rundown for you. We run leagues on our Maindeck Discord server all year long for various games such as Grand Archive, Final Fantasy TCG. You have your Battle Spirit Saga, which I'm really enjoying, and we also do it for universes. They are free to play. It's a very casual environment, but with a competitive edge. You win real prizes no matter where you live, which is a really big deal. We'll send it wherever we can as long as you're willing to receive it, and there's no commitment. You can play when you have time. I can attest to that myself, considering my hectic work schedule where I may not been able to finish the league like I want to. There's a Discord link in our description so that you can join in the fun on the Maindeck Games Discord server. All right, so we're back to the deck here. What you're looking at is Sheep's twist on Soiree. Soiree in Opus 19 has definitely seen no signs of slowing down and got a pretty sweet tool in Warrior of Light from Opus 19, and a pretty neat inclusion here of the Light Titus, which we'll get to in a little bit because I have some thoughts about that. So what makes Soiree tick? So Soiree is a job-focused tribe that really likes to get maximum value of having as many of this job member Morze's Soiree as possible. So starting with the backups, you want to take a look at the linchpin to start this operation. We're going to have 3 copies of Amber. When Amber enters the field, you can search for your, either a Madame Adele or job Morze's Soiree member and add it to your hand. Amber has EX Burst. It has every line of relevant text you want. Yes, it costs 4, but it's a perfect investment so we can fix our colors to play Shinju immediately after. You're going to want to have a very aggressive start into looking for Amber in your opening hand. You don't see Amber or a copy of Shinju in your opener, you're probably ditching it because Shinju is going to allow us to pay for any of our Morze's Soiree job members with elements of CP of any color. So your Earth backups can tap for Ice as long as they're paying for a Morze's Soiree job member and are of that job itself. So you're playing 3 copies of Shinju as well. You need this card. And then they could also party with any element outside of the normal element restrictions as long as they are a member of Morze's Soiree. So they don't need to be 2 Earth cards, for an example. They could be an Earth and a Lightning card as long as they share that Morze's Soiree job. Rounding out the triad of 3 cards that I mostly identify Soiree with outside of Madame Adele is Elvis, one of the more insane removal cards out there right now. Elvis deals 3k damage to a forward when he enters the field for each Morze's Soiree job member you have on the table. So if you went turn 1 Amber into Shinju, well, surprise, your Elvis is already dinging for 9,000 damage, which takes care of vast majority of the threats in the format. A lot of stuff is still lingering above that 8k and under. You do have a couple cards that are popping up now, like your Locks, your Mogs, aka Yeti Spaghetti. Shout out to Chris Adams, the RVA returners, and a man after my own heart playing the Final Fantasy VI Tribal, but Final Fantasy VI Tribal does have some numbers it can get higher than 2, so Elvis is sweet to take out those locks early so that they don't get that incremental card advantage, and they usually deal with most other threats in the format pretty cleanly. And then you have EX Burst, so you don't get to put it in play. Why not just rip it off damage and really tilt your opponent and just get a nice 6 sweet piece of removal. Rounding out the Morze's Soiree backup package, you're going to have Lexa, and Lexa is really cool to give you that extra 1,000 push, which isn't quite as relevant as some may think, but with playing copies of Hecatoncheir, and Hecatoncheir being one of the more premier removals in the format right now, thanks to the Boogeyman in the Closet Category 13, Lightning and Friends, you really do have situations where you might bet 1k to push you out of that board wipe range. So now it turns into a one-sided wipe versus a symmetrical board wipe. And then Lexa also is going to give that Madame Adele a little bit extra protection. So Madame Adele can stick on the board so she can protect the rest of your job Soiree forwards. Rounding out the FFBE backups here, which again, Morze Soiree, their category is FFBE. We got 3 copies of Luca, and 3 is a lot, but I really like Sheep's idea of seeing this card. Luca is going to give your FFBE forwards, aka all your Morze Soiree category members, plus 1k power. That plus 1k power, obviously, as previously discussed with Hecaton Care being one of the premier removals, it's also going to lend to help you trading really well with a little bit more of the stronger power in the format. I hate to bring up Yeti Spaghetti again in the FF6 deck, but again, they have 9k, even 10k threats that they can come across the board with. So it's really nice to have that extra buffer to play around with and really make them regret trying to swing in without a Mog 6 on the board to give them first strike. And it's just going to make combat math better in your favor. And then now we're going to go into the normal kind of earthy kind of cards that these decks play. Sheep decided to play 2 copies of Tyro. Tyro with the EX burst is extremely powerful to get ourselves a forward of our choice. It's really nice for the mana fixing, here goes my magic again, CP fixing by allowing us to tap for any color that Tyro can generate while he's on the field. And that extra 2,000 damage has seen some legs. It's sneaky. A lot of people forget about that line of text on the card. The little boy standing on the books does bring a little bit of power with him. And last but not least, 1 copy of the big bad Shanty T, Shantoto. Shantoto, again, nice little color fixing engine, but we're not playing it for that. We're playing it for that sweet, sweet board removal. Get that stuff out of here. If you are going wide, Shantoto is going to punish you if you are not ready for it. And a lot of decks are still leaving that 1 to maybe 2 copies in to really show your opponent, hey, don't do that wide strategy again, or I'm going to drop big Shanty T on you to wipe that board. All right, so we've talked enough about the backups. Backups, pretty traditional. I do like, again, extra copies of Luca, really sweet. It's going to really, again, get that extra damage push out there so you could really break through to close out the game. Going into the forwards, we got 1 copy of the Catboy himself, Pesiota. Pesiota is, it's funny, right? Because this card in Soiree list goes from 0 copies to 1 copy, 0 copies to 1 copy. I feel like depending on every day of the week. But Pesiota is just a 3k that with EX burst that says when Pesiota enters the field, activate all job Morze Soiree member you control. This is kind of a 6 swing as a EX burst to allow combat tricks, or you could just kind of play it as a free card as incremental value, untap all the stuff you just used to maybe pay for it, and keep going. So we're not really a lot to say about Pesiota. A lot of people can do without it. I'm okay with the copy. I think it's a sweet inclusion. We have 1 copy of Irwin. Irwin, when Irwin enters the field, your opponent's going to discard a card from their hand. If you control 4 or more Morze Soiree members, they have to reveal and you get to choose what they discard. Irwin, again, is one of those flex cards that can variable in an amount of copies. I've always settled on 1 myself. I think it's just a nice card to get, but sometimes it doesn't have relevant text. But the idea of thought seizing your opponent, ripping a card out of their hand when they are counting on that card, or maybe they tapped out and didn't want to invest on something early and are stuck with discarding that card, really lends to frustration. And that's what, to me, that's what Soiree is all about. These Soiree forwards are all very frustrating and do very annoying things, and Irwin definitely contributes to that. So 1 copy is great. I think Sheep was on the right track with that. We've got 3 copies of Vespia. Vespia draws cards. You know, when Vespia enters the field, if you control 2 Soiree members, you draw a card. And if you control 4, she draws you another card. Really just sick text here, right? Cards are good. Getting ahead is good. You're already playing all these Soiree team members, so why not more cards do? You know, something like that. Vespia also just benefits from just giving you a card off EX burst as long as you control 2 or more Soiree members, which is definitely never a bad thing. If you somehow get this off EX burst when you don't have to, it definitely is one of the worst feelings in the world, but you could do much worse. Finally, the last Soiree member I wanted to discuss that wasn't the leader of the whole outfit is Merrill. Merrill at 4 CP comes in. When you control 2 or more Soiree members, she's going to have haste. And then if you control 4, you're going to choose one of their forwards and break it. What a feels bad card Meryl is when you are finally feeling like you're turning the corner. You see the Elvis on the board. You've juked a little bit of damage. You've maybe hit an Elvis early where it didn't hit your board off EX burst. And then here comes Meryl. A, to crack you in the face, and B, to get rid of one of your forwards. One of the most awful feelings to go against, so it's one of the really sweet things to do with this deck. It plays 3 copies. If you could play 6 of this card, the deck would play 6. It's an obscene card for the amount of value it gets. It's really easy to hit that critical mass of 4 Soiree members, and in a pinch, just having a haste forward to put pressure on your opponent is never a bad thing. So we talked about all the Morze Soiree members in depth, but we need to talk about what the piece de resistance, the forward that's going to bring the entire deck together, just released full art promo at your local store or online leagues. You are going to have 3 copies of Madame Adele. Madame Adele says, your job, Morze Soiree members gain. If this character is dealt damage by your opponent's summons or abilities, this damage becomes 0, and they cannot be broken by opposing summons that don't deal damage. What this is going to do is almost undoubtedly keep your board alive through so much annoying removal. There are an amount of obscene cards that just really one for one you. Bahamut, Cactar, everything else. Madame Adele is out there to say, hey, no thank you. Oh, and by the way, when Madame Adele enters the field, you're going to go ahead and grab a Morze Soiree member from your break zone and put it into play. So you're going to invest 4 CP to potentially get another 4 CP back on a forward. And who's to say you just didn't bring a Meryl from your break zone out to break one of their forwards, potentially crack him in the face, Vesvia to draw more cards. Elvis, if you don't have him play to blow something up. There are so many avenues with Madame Adele. When she hits the board, things are getting real if your opponent doesn't have an answer like Amaterasu or Aquatarasu, the new Leviathan from the previous opus. So that's the core of the Morze Soiree members. We have a couple other tech forwards in here, which are really sweet. Talking about the biggest linchpin of them all, we got 3 copies of Warrior of Light. Warrior of Light is really sweet in the Soiree list because you already play a rainbow assortment of backups. So on the off chance you could hard cast him, you get the benefits of untapping all of your backups you control and drawing a card, which is backbreaking. If you have played against the Windex, you know that they love to untap their stuff and do stuff again. Well, why not? I play this 10k body with every relevant keyword in the game that isn't back attack and draws me a card and is a 10,000k power body. Unreal. And then you also have the ping damage element, which is great for trading or some of the pesky category 13 strategies or some of the even go wide littler body strategies that are still kind of rumbling around out there. And then if we can't reliably tap our backups to pay for Warrior of Light, Sheep decided to play 3 copies of Opus 16 Cecil. Cecil was kind of in the Soiree list for a while as kind of a way to cheat more cards in. Kind of fell out of favor, but is back really big, mainly because Warrior of Light. So Warrior of Light lets us untap all of our stuff if we paid with all of our CP, but Cecil will let us just play it as part of Cecil's ability. When Cecil enters the field, you can play a character of cost 4 or less from your hand on the field. And that's really, really insane to invest 5 CP on 18k power, one of which has haste, first strike, brave, and is basically a wall and can ping stuff out. Warrior of Light says nighty-night to category 13, and Cecil's icing on the cake to protect your rest of your board. Cecil's secondary effect, when 1 or more characters are chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities, if they don't pay 2, cancel their effects. So that extra tax just really makes your board super sticky and hard to interact with. So Cecil usually gets that grinds that incremental value out in keeping your opponent's resources tied up. And in addition, plays any of our Soiree members, Madame Adele, everything else in the deck, and could and could really just kind of mess with your opponent and just really have them thinking how bad they feel when you just drop a Warrior of Light on them. Past that, going back up to some of the one-ofs here, we've got 1 copy of Bosch von Ronsenberg of Dalmasca. Basically in there is kind of an extra tutor to get any of your fire or earth characters whenever you can. Taking that extra point of damage to search, while sounds kind of bad, is actually super sick when you hit a copy of Tyro or Elvis or Vesvia to get some extra value. Maybe draw a card, maybe blow a forward up. So that's great. Bosch, if he sticks around at damage 3, becomes a 9k body with Brave, and at damage 5, whenever he attacks, he domes something for 8k. So he also kind of says you need to answer him, but really he's just there to kind of give us some extra reach. We're also playing one copy of Axstar, who also is going to benefit from Luca, as we discussed, which I kind of forgot he was FFBE. But when Axstar enters the field, I could choose a card with EX Burst in my damage zone and trigger its EX Burst effect. This effect is put on the stack, which is a whole other discussion where people don't quite know how Axstar works sometimes. But Axstar is super sweet for getting those extra Elvish triggers once he's in play, and maybe once in the EX zone and the damage zone. So you're really going to get extra triggers of that. You can get Tyro triggers. You can get Amber triggers to search for another Soiree member. So that's really awesome. And then at damage 3, he's just going to search for an FFB character outside of himself and add it to your hand. So he could then just go ahead and get Madame Adele or anybody else and really just continue to frustrate your opponent with the consistency levels of this deck. Finally, at the very end down here, well, not finally, I forgot. Hold on. We got to go back up because I really want to talk about having a copy of Arc in this deck. So Arc, when Arc enters the field, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You get to get 1 fire, earth, or water card and add them to your hand. This is just awesome, right? You're going to get more cards. We're digging deeper into our deck, scrying 5 cards into our deck to find a card we want. Super, super awesome, super relevant, especially as an EX Burst. Can't underestimate the fact that I could just trigger that off EX Burst. And then if there are 4 more different elements among forwards you control, they gain 2,000 power. This happens, but this is incidentally happening with this deck. You're not really slamming Arc and being like, okay, cool, I'm hoping this is going to happen. It's a nice added benefit. And then finally, right here from the 1-ofs, we've got 1 copy of the new Titus from Opus 19. When Titus enters the field, choose a forward that costs 5 or less and tuck it to the bottom of the deck. Really, really powerful stuff here. Light cards and dark cards come with the caveat of you don't want to play many and you really need them to be impactful because they're otherwise dead cards in your hand. I think Titus really crosses that bar of being impactful and doing enough to include it in decks that are looking for an extra piece of removal. And the EX Burst is also great. Removing 20 cards in your break zone to replay them again. Could it happen? Sure. I don't know how many times Sheep did that in their time during the league. I'd be interested to find that out. You could also leave a comment below if you've had any experiences with Titus, if you've actually activated this ability. Only time I've ever really seen it activated was in pre-release events where this card was a house. So I'm really excited to see this card in constructive play. I think this is a sick inclusion by Sheep. Very last forward to cover really quickly is 3 copies of FwostySheep. FwostySheep, the Lunarian himself, he's going to resolve the effects based on each element you use to pay for him from top to bottom on the card. So FwostySheep can potentially draw a card, add a summon from your break zone in your hand, bounce a character your opponent controls, and choose a forward and put on top of their opponent's deck. The likelihood of hitting all 4 of these is rare, but more often than not, you're going to hit at least 2 to 3. So FwostySheep is just an awesome kind of incremental value card that also, if you really, really can commit him in later game and see him at the right moments, completely turn the tide of the game. So he's a really awesome card. He's been kind of a mainstay in Soiree lists that I've seen locally, and I've always been impressed with this card. All right, finally, we're going to talk about the summons. Not really a whole lot to get into here. 3 copies of Kusith, choose a forward or backup in your break zone and add it to your hand with EX Burst. Who doesn't like Recursion? Recursion is so powerful in this game. It's one of the key aspects of the game I enjoy the most, is that there's so much tutoring and recursion on many cards, and Kusith adds a layer that of kind of just, oops, I have 4 to 5 copies of these cards in my deck, that really just makes it more fun to play decks. So always, I've never not skimped on this card. I see decks play 1 or 2 copies, and then I wonder what planet I'm from that makes me think a little bit differently from themselves. So love Kusith here. We've got 3 copies of Amaterasu. Choose 1 auto ability, cancels effect, and if it's from a forward, we get a deal at 8k. This card cleanly deals with annoying cards in the format, such as Cecil, which I mentioned before. You could Cecil the auto ability of him bringing a forward into play and doming him off the board before he becomes a problem, and other problematic auto abilities in the game right now. There's so many to list. Amaterasu, since it's been a card, has been a mainstay in the TCG. If you're in Fire, it's really hard not to include this card. So kudos to Sheep to keeping that 3 Ama dream alive. Finally, 2 copies of Old Helicopter itself from Opus 15 Hecaton. Hecaton Care says 8k to all the forwards in play, but I can only do it on my turn. This card is on a personal opinion, seen Arise in play as a direct result of Category 13. This card cleanly deals with that entire board state once it resolves. So I definitely think if you're an Earth, you have to play this card right now because you still have to respect Category 13 as a deck. While it may have not posted many results yet, it's going to post results, and I really think that it's not going away anytime soon. So 2 copies of this card I think is excellent. All right, so overall, this is Sheep's take on Morze's Soiree with a little bit of Warrior Light action for Opus 19. My thoughts on the deck is that it's pretty sweet. I really like the inclusion of Titus. As mentioned, Arc is very cool. I think it could definitely still play Thornton 6 or Thornton, the 5-drop that lets us search for any card we want and add it to our hand. But I could respect that it's not in the deck. Thornton is a 5 CP investment, and sometimes, especially now with Luca being in the decks, you really may not want that extra water CP as a backup, but I still think I would have found room for 1 copy. There's also been some interesting tech cards without giving the secrets away from some deck list out there that are starting to get played. A friend of mine from our local community just top 8'd the Georgia Store Championship, and he played a copy of Opus 2 Emperor to shut down auto abilities action abilities and special abilities in his Soiree list, and I thought that was a super sick call out. So there's the thing about Soiree is you have these couple of flex spots, and that you could see that Sheep decided their own take on it, and I think that's the beauty of Soiree, right? You do have that room to kind of wiggle around and play what you want outside of the core. So yeah, a lot of room to choose your own adventure with Soiree, but I really appreciate Sheep's take on this list. So that's going to wrap it up for my very first deck tech discussion about our league winner FwostySheep's Morze's Soiree deck. If you really liked what you saw here and like the idea of joining a league and playing some online webcam play, definitely check out our Discord in the comment or in the description below. Really get in there, and even if you don't end up playing, hang out with a pretty sweet community. My name's Jason. I thank you for your time today, and I really look forward to seeing you guys join us in our league that's going to begin in June for Final Fantasy trading card game. And thanks again for watching. I look forward to talking to you guys soon, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks for watching another Maindeck video. Maindeck is sponsored by JW Sports Cards and Gaming. Visit jwwcards.com and by our amazing patrons. Get exclusive content and other cool perks on the Maindeck Patreon. And hey, while you're here, I bet you'd like one of these videos. Go ahead, click one. I know you're gonna love it.